good with voters.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Wednesday morning, and this was a couple hours after the tariffs went into effect, that CEOs are telling him, hey, the economy is in pretty good shape here. They weren't too concerned. He also said that the tariff policy was for Main Street. It's Main Street's turn now. Wall Street has had their turn for years. What is, from this poll, what is the sense from business leaders, small and medium-sized businesses? Did they have more confidence in the tariff policies opposed to Wall Street?
They did. Business leaders in general were more favorable towards the president than investors were and the general public. And that makes sense, right? Because for most small and medium-sized businesses across the country, some form of protectionism would support their competitiveness or their ability to grow market share. But obviously, there's a difference between Wall Street or business leaders of the Fortune 100 companies, which do business globally, which were all ringing the alarm bells, and most of the business leaders in Main Street, which had approached a wait-and-see opportunity. I think concerning for the administration was the fact that people actually did not believe that the markets would bounce back quickly enough from tariffs. And essentially, the majority expected the bounce back to take a year or longer, with the BDMs really being that exception. 52% of them, the business decision makers, 52% of them said it will bounce back in 3 months to a year or less. Everyone else actually expected the recovery period to be slow and to be protracted. And consumers had started to factor that in. So while they were saying that they were still purchasing everyday goods like groceries, beverages, clothing, and shoes as usual, they actually said that they were starting to hold back on upgrading their phones, buying consumer electronics, household appliances, buying a new car, and buying luxury goods. And we're talking about, close to 7 in 10 of consumers saying, for example, they were holding back on buying a new car or buying luxury goods. So the impact to the economy was starting to be felt by a cooling effect of sorts with consumers. And that's always concerning and worrying as well. And I'll say one other thing, which is when you ask people, do the tariffs go too far or do they not go far enough or are they about right? Close to 50% said that the tariffs go too far. About a third said about right, and only about 20% said that they did not go far enough. So there was this consensus that Trump was being very heavy-handed right out of the gate. And this was leading to a lot of unnecessary instability, a lot of anxiety, and that, frankly, was going to boomerang or backfire because consumers and voters had started to say that we don't quite think that the tariffs will have the effect that Trump intends, which is to get other countries to give us concessions because he has gone too far. 57% were actually doubting whether it would have the intended effect. And that was a significant shift from before April the 2nd, when you had really 53 to 55% that said the opposite or held the opposite view. They were thinking that, tariffs could work. It's something new. It's something different. Maybe we should let Trump try it out. So the heavy-handed component did not help the administration. The fact that there wasn't a lot of structure in the rollout of these tariffs also didn't help.
To the point about not a lot of structure in the rollout, the White House was saying up until President Trump announced this pause, we will not pause. There will be no pause on tariffs. Even an economist I talked to yesterday morning before the pause said President Trump is not changing his tune. Obviously, we saw the president change his tune. There's reporting that the bond market reaction had something to do with it. When President Trump was asked, he said, hey, I saw people get queasy. I saw people get yippy about what they were seeing about the economy. Did people want him to change course here? Because there's been two arguments. Supporters of President Trump have said, hey, this is the art of the deal. People who weren't so supportive, who were a little more critical, said, hey, it really looks like the president blinked here. Did they want him to stand firm in this tariff policy, or did they want him to bend a bit and to pause? What's your general consensus from these numbers?
Well, right now, where we stand is that voters are quite split again, as I said, on whether or not tariffs are an effective foreign and economic policy or not. And they clearly believe that it causes instability. They clearly believe that it will lead to higher prices, and those are um, not good expectations to have for the administration. And certainly the fact that they don't believe that it will lead to significant economic growth, but rather will lead to economic decline is problematic, right? Because the whole people of the administration was that this might trigger a short-term recession. It will be painful in the short term, but we're going to bounce back. And in that way, then they would expect to do well in the midterms, which are just around the corner. That said, voters still think that tariffs will create more jobs than they'll take away. Voters still believe, and this is close to 50% of all voters, that it will increase revenues for the US Treasury rather than the 3 in 10 that says that it will decrease revenues. So, in some regard, Trump did communicate clearly what the tariffs are for. They're about jobs and protecting jobs, and they're about raising money for the U.S. government. So the balance here really is in which of these set of arguments will win with voters, and we have to see what the administration will announce, whether there are any wins, bilateral trade agreements that bring tariffs down to zero for both parties, as the president has entertained possibly with Europe, and as the European commissioners have said that they'd be open to doing, and whether or not he can reach deals with the likes of Japan and Vietnam and others. So it's yet to be seen. But right now, public opinion is quite split. And the reason public opinion is where it is because of the tumult that was created over the span of a week with tariffs that the public clearly sees as being too heavy handed and also not having been rolled out in a structured way and in a way that would get to the intended goals.